Today we're going to tackle our own Javier Cuevas 1968 XR-7 Cougar dash pad replacement. A lot of people have emailed in and said, can you show us a video on this or that or the other? One by one we're going to get to them. This is a driver. It needs everything. It's only got 97,000 miles, but it's been parked out in a driveway for about a decade, and the moisture with all the pitting going on and the UV rays have not been kind to it. Javier can't afford to do everything right off the bat, but he wants to focus on this area. When he gets in the car, this is what he looks at, and this is sorry looking. Everything about this dash is tired. The bezel, the chrome's bad, the gauges, the background's bad. We got broken off knobs, bad dash pad, bad paint here. This is bad. Everything here. So he doesn't have a lot of money. So we're going to try to, on a budget, make this look as nice as possible. And the first thing we're going to start off with is disassembly. I like to start off with these toggle tips on the XR-7. You can take them off after the fact. We got this handy little tool here. Don't use a screwdriver. You'll screw up the chrome bezel, and if you have good wood grain, you risk the chance of slipping and putting a big gouge on it. And it's much more stable to do it on the car. When you have this fragile, flexible, old plastic piece in your hand or on the bench, you don't want to muscle on them. You risk the chance of cracking them, and some of these are unusually tight. Now, we got a row of Phillips screws all along the bottom here. I would refrain from using a power tool here because as I feel this coming out, I see that the head of the screw is catching on this plastic. If I had a power drill here, I would have snapped this already. And by the way, this last screw over here, and I can tell this is an original screw, this last screw over here is supposed to be chocolate brown painted to match, or at least not stand out too drastically from the wood grain fascia that it sits with. I can see the remnants of the chocolate paint on there. I can see the small head. That is what's supposed to be on the car and rarely is. At this point, if you got a nice car, you're going to want to put a towel right over here because you don't want to scratch this column. We're going to repaint this column. Now, if you have a nice dash pad, that's a definite no-no, but what you saw me do was rip this out of its foam setting here because this is so warped it was interfering with the cluster. This pad's getting thrown away. Never would you want to pull on this dash pad on a good dash pad. Okay, it's giving me some resistance right here. That's the speedometer cable. You should be able to gently thread that speedometer cable through the firewall enough to get your hand back there. Barely enough room to get your hand back there, I should say. I stress, be careful here. All this is very fragile, and if you just bump it on the wrong place, you can break it. So we're going to go slow here. And usually they're just finger tight. There we go. Now we can take it a little further. The next thing we'll need to do is start unplugging. This main plug usually comes apart real easy if you know where to squeeze. Right here and on the opposite side. And a little bit of a wiggle. Here's a plug next to it. Gentle. Now we can get it a little further. Here comes the wiper switch. Let's wiggle as we pull. That's the wiper switch. Lastly, the tachometer. Some of you will find that your tachometer doesn't work, and when you get behind this dash, you're going to find these two wires hooked into each other. That's the only way the car will run if the tachometer is missing or broken. So a correctly working tachometer, of course, will be hooked red to red, black to black. Now, as I took this dash out, I wiggled and I noticed there's no nut on here. Almost always that nut is broken. In fact, most times you'll get in and you'll find that this whole stud has been broken off. Reason being, that's a pretty hard stud to get to. Now, if you are so fortunate to have a car that has been put back together properly or never having been taken apart in the first place, the way you're going to get to this nut on the back side, and by the way, it goes right in there. The easiest way is if you don't have a console, you would take out your radio assembly and reach in there and get it. I suppose you could take out your ashtray assembly, including, you know, the housing here, and reach in there too. But one of these two areas is going to have to come apart if you have a car that still has that stud. I highly suggest if it's still there, take the extra time. Don't just pull on your dash. I'm going to take off the whole glove box assembly. It's easier than taking out just the liner. Oops, we got a nut that broke. This car's rusty in some areas from all the moisture it's had in the interior. And broke too. We're in trouble. This is held on with the screws up here and 5 speed nuts, also known as self-tapping nuts, I think, on the back. And they're shallow, and a 5/8 socket will take them off. I like using a spark plug socket because I can grip this with my hands, or I can put a wrench on that, but I don't like putting a ratchet back there. Reason being is those studs are so fragile that if you can't get it off with finger pressure, the next step is it's going to break with the ratchet anyway. So I'm going to feel for these 5 studs back there, and I'm going to take them off with my fingers, and if it gets stuck and it's more than my finger pressure can do, I'm going to back it off and try it again and work it back and forth. And inevitably, I'll go back there and I'll either find it already has broken studs or I'll break a stud in the process. It's actually no big deal because it's an easy fix, and the fix actually makes it better than factory. Okay, your first stud is about right here. And look at that. I broke a stud and that one was already cracked. See that discoloration? Don't sweat it, it's gonna happen. Okay, we got one of these nuts off without breaking a stud, so we know we got one good stud back there. And by the way, we have these on our website. These plugs probably have not been undone since they were new, so don't be ashamed to use a little help. Now comes the dash pad. Now we have another set of screws from the dash pad itself to the cowl. Your next row of fasteners is 3/8 nuts that studs are embedded into these dash pads, so these are pretty easy to get to after the cluster's out. Just little guys with a captured washer on them. Okay, your next challenge is getting to these studs right here. This is a non-AC car, so it's not going to be too hard to pull this out. If you got an air conditioning car, you just got that much more to deal with there. It's not too bad though. So we'll just let that hang there, although we're probably going to replace it with a good used one. Look how pitted that is. That was embedded in the corner of the dash pad. And there's the flanged nut that was holding it on the other side. Now let's get the other side stud. Don't put away that 5/8 inch socket yet. You got one more speed nut holding a stud right here. You probably actually don't need to take this panel off to get to this stud. You can reach over there, but we're going to do some dash painting today, so we wanted to get that out of the way. I had to wrestle this stud out. The sad part is, had it been embedded in a good dash pad and been that rusty, there'd be no way to not rip this out of its anchor here. Okay, now we're ready to take out the dash pad. We're gonna have to give it some forward pressure towards the windshield because these studs, if you notice, are right up against the metal. Here we go. Okay, now we are gonna strip these down all the way. When we send these in to West Coast Classic Cougar for restoration, there doesn't need to be anything on them. Now, this little metal piece here, it's kind of more off than on, leave it on. What we're gonna do is, when you get it back, I suppose you could epoxy it in place, but I like to use these little trim screws we sell on our website, and then take it over the grinder, grind a little bit off, and put one screw there, 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 and there. You can't put any screws here because it'll interfere with the installation of this metal. So yeah, that was kind of a weak system from the factory, those peened over, melted over plastic studs. They're always broken. Everything else is coming off. Let's get our handy dandy tool again to take off these rocker switches, or toggle switches I should say. Keep in mind which way they go. Each plug is different. Ford was always good that way. You couldn't hook them up to the wrong piece. So from the driver's side, black 2, red 3, black 3, blue 2. 3/8 on that socket. Okay, now we're going to take this wood grain fascia off. Be careful not to pry too much here. You'll break that plastic, especially over here, because if you pry on this too much, you'll take a chunk out. So we really want to be gentle in that region. We're not going to go for that one. We're going to use a screwdriver on that one. This is a 68. In 67, this wiper knob switch is a little more low profile. 68, you're going to have to get your Allen wrench out. Don't forget your set screw, or I mean it's your tripometer, and this is your reset knob. So that has to come out. Now you can take it off. In every one of these I see, well, just about every one of these I see, somebody's been in there and done something wrong. It looks like they over-tightened some screws here. When we go to replate this, we'll go ahead and enforce it with epoxy. This little piece, when you send it in, just tape it to the bezel, and we'll try to do something with that. Other places you'll see little cracks where they've over-tightened screws, or just from age, probably just from age. For the most part, we're going to ignore cracks like that. The assembly's still going to go together okay with a crack like that. I think it's best to use a screwdriver in tight spots. Okay, the only thing that holds this wood grain fascia on are these bezels, nothing else. It's important we take these out properly because, from my experience, you're able to bend those tabs once and then twice when you reinstall them. But any more than that, if you bend those tabs back and forth 3 and 4 times, they're pretty much going to break off. So we're going to bend these tabs as gently as we can up, and we aren't going to go any further than we have to, because if we go any further than we have to, we're going to pucker this area and leave a wrinkle in our bezel there. And we want to make it look like there's no trace, like nobody was ever here. Also, I've found that you don't have to bend up all 3 tabs. You can just bend up these 2 tabs and leave that one alone and just hook it in there. Let's see how good we can get, how these come out. Notice the rust on that. That might even break when I go to reinstall it. It's weak. If yours does break, we do have used replacements. There we go. It's ready to be bead blasted. We're going to repaint those black. Okay, that's what we want to see it looking like when you send it in for restoration. We got one more step though. Oh no, we're not done yet. These have to come off for 2 reasons. 1, you're going to send them in for rechrome, and 2, it's going to be easier to polish this lens with them off. Let's get a little blade here. Now if you happen to slip and scratch this, I don't think it's a big deal. Nobody's going to see the back side of this. That gets carefully put in a Ziploc bag and sent to us for restoration. Here's one piece everybody forgets to remove. See that piece there? Let's see if we can light this up and show you what it is. It says high beam in red in 68. We need to pull that lens out of there because we don't want it to be chrome plated. And you're going to reach in on this side, in this cavity, and push on that stud ever so gently. And as we push on the stud, look what's happening. There you go. It's got a little leg there. So push on the stud, the tape comes undone, put it off to the side. You will reinstall it later. I know our how-to videos are a little bit dry. They're good to put you to sleep. If you ignore everything in this video, start paying attention now. This is the critical part. When you send these to West...
Earthquake, run for your lives! Man, run for your lives!
Idiot. Anyway, yeah. Wrap these right. I mean, don't skimp. I know bubble wrap is expensive and they hose you for it down at the office supply place, wherever you get it, but this thing needs to be cocooned. Like multiple layers. Like keep going. Spray foam, I don't care what you do. And don't wrap them together, wrap them individually. I know, you know how to wrap stuff, but it's just so heartbreaking for me to call you back when your stuff gets here from another country and say, yeah, we got crumbs here. Newspaper doesn't cut it. You know, I would go another 3 or 4 layers after this, bundle it with this, then go a couple more layers, put it in a big sturdy box, and insure it for $250. Okay, now we're gonna start putting it back together. Got a couple products here that are gonna make a world of difference. Easy to install. Check that out. That is ugly. So we're gonna go to the website and get a set of these overlays. And these are 3M, and they are designed to be left in the sun without fear of them curling or delaminating or fading. And of course they're not a perfect fit, but you don't see that. You only see a little bit through the gauge lens. We'll put all 4 of these on, and that is going to make the world of difference. Be good to splash a little white paint on these needles to make them show again. Now is the time. We're going to change these translucent filters. As you can see, they all got burn spots and they're cloudy. Look at the difference between this translucent filter and this one. You're going to have much brighter gauge lights with this. To expedite this video, I chose to grab the already completed pieces that we've been using these as demos in the showroom for, well, a year and a half. So these are got a little bit of shelf wear on them. I bet over 150 people have handled these in the last year and a half, but it's a good testament to how well this product holds up. So we're going to skip right over how to install all this overlay on the faded bezels. And these are actually our Javier's faded bezels here. Daryl just did these for us, but that's on another video. Keep in mind when you get this service from us, it does include this emblem. And these 2 buttons will be rechromed, although on this demo they are not rechromed, but yours will be. Do know that. Now, do you remember how our switches go? I think I do. I think it went black, red, the bigger black, and blue in that order. And the FOMO-CO logo goes in the up position. I use simple fine steel wool to clean these up. And this tool is just as handy for installation as it is for taking them off. Then we put on, remember how his tips are broken off on a couple? We have these tips brand new, and man, are they tight. You will have difficulty getting these on. I sell these products all the time. I have my hands on them all the time, and even I'm kind of surprised how nice this turned out. So we skipped ahead and assembled it all. Actually, Javier did. He sprayed this with gloss black, which now he realizes was a mistake, but still, it looks much better. The big news here, this vinyl wrap, 3 pieces. It also includes the overhead console piece. And we sell them with these end cap pieces. And this piece, that's the #1 big improvement here. Biggest bang for the buck, too, by the way. #2 big improvement is the rechrome of all this. Also, we got new gauge faces. Remember how faded these were before? That really helped. We put new toggle tips on. We got a non-working junk radio out of the wrecking yard just because he's going to go with the secret audio system and doesn't care if this works. We put reproduction knobs on it. He opted for a junkyard shift handle instead of a new one. Haven't rebuilt the clock yet, but that's later. He's got a lot of work to do on this car. The floor mats, I think, are a big improvement. Overhead console bezels in place, a few bulbs, a turn signal wand, and that's about it. It really turned this interior around, just doing those minor, well, a couple of them major, but mostly minor touches. So this just changes your attitude as you drive down the road looking at your car. This is such a focal point and gives them inspiration to do the rest. But overall, for not a lot of money, I say he turned around the interior of this car and probably increased the value of it $1,500 to $2,000, considering how shabby this looked before. I like it.